What's up today, YouTube? Welcome back to another episode of Advanced Weapon Tactics. Today we're going to be testing out this African Dagger. Now, I don't know much about African weapons, but they do interest me. They also have these really cool eccentric designs for swords and things like that, and their archery. So I definitely like to test things like those in the future. I'm definitely by no means an expert in African weaponry, or really any weaponry. I'm just a hobbyist. But we're definitely going to test this out on Ivanhead.
Lil Mao presents Advanced Weapon Tactics, the weapons review show that tests the lethality and destruction of various cultural artillery. Will this week's weapon be powerful enough to destroy our new main heads? Find out now. Do not try this at home.
Okay, YouTube, so here we have the vintage African Dagger. Now this thing is actually really cool. It's got this nice leather scabbard, and you can see it's nicely cord wrapped. Now when I initially bid on this, I thought it was more of a short sword, but when I got it in the mail, this is a dagger. Now I got these on eBay. I see them all over. They're anywhere from 60 to 200 US dollars. I paid about 100, but I would try to get it more on the 60 end, so that way you don't overpay for it. And it's got this nice corded handle, and it's stuffed with almost like this type of straw and burlap. It's this nice crude, this is probably just scrap metal they found in Africa, but the ingenuity in how they create this dagger out of this scrap metal is pretty awesome. You can see what it most likely would have came from over here. And the scabbard, it's got this so it doesn't point out. Scabbard's pretty cool. Now actually on some of them they would have like a bigger circle here so you could attach it to a belt, but ours appears to be broken. And it's just leather core. There's no wood in this. Just a pretty cool blade made out of scrap metal. You can see how crude it is, and it's got a decent sharpness to it. Not razor sharp, but it's got an edge. You could probably refine it a little bit more. We can see here slashing pretty much does nothing to the skull. Now if we sharpen it up, it might do more damage to like the chest area. I then tried to stab with the dagger, however it just falls off the stand. I then laid the head on its side, so that way we can get some actual damage on the skull, because up to this point we pretty much weren't able to do much to the skull. As you can see here, we were able to break through the skull. Now this does appear to be over an area that was previously damaged with a different weapon, so I think it made it a little bit easier for the knife to go through, but we were able to get a good few inches of penetration on this. Now for a two-handed stab. Now as you see here, we hit the same spot, but in our next strike, we'll hit someplace new.
I mean, this was already here before.
So as we can see here, a new, fresh, clean spot, and it did seem to go right through the skull pretty easily. Now the blade does feel sharp, so as you can see here, we're going to see how well it cuts flesh, and it does pretty well actually. Now we can see here how difficult it actually is to get through the skull. That's why two-handed strikes are much more ideal. Most strikes are not going to go through the skull.
Ooh, there's a nice flesh cut.
Now while this thing doesn't have much of a slashing ability, stabbing flesh does very well. And here we have a nice stab to the top of the head. Again, flesh strikes is where this weapon really excels. If you know specifically what this dagger was used for, let us know in the comment below.
and that stab went in about 2 to 3 inches into the flesh. And when we compare it to the skull strikes, it basically just cuts very small into the skull and doesn't really break the surface. Now, if someone was a lot stronger, I think they could probably get through this. No trouble getting right down to the bone, but once it does, it doesn't go much further than that.
Now, I don't know if you can see this, but after all that testing, there's a slight bend in the tip right here. That can be easily bent back on an anvil. I mean, it is just scrap metal, or I believe it's scrap metal. So for it to be able to stand up with those strikes is pretty impressive. Nothing on the handle is loose whatsoever. So if this thing is a souvenir like I heard, it's a pretty damn good one because it holds up and it is a functional knife. Now, I'm not sure what part of Africa that comes from. If you know, let us know in the comments below. If you know about how old these types of things would be, let us know in the comment section below. It's a pretty cool little dagger. It's good for cutting flesh, not so much for the bone. We got to the bone a few times, but that was because I was laying down on its head and we impaled it. Also, there was some previous damage from other weapons, so I'm not 100% sure it was that. But for cutting flesh, it works decent. And I think in Africa, because of the heat, maybe in that location, people would tend to be unarmored. So that is where it could be effective. Or maybe it's a tool. I'm not 100% sure. If you know more information about this dagger, please let us know in the comments below. While it is disappointing that we couldn't really get through the skull, we got some other weapons coming up that definitely went through the skull. Maybe we'll sharpen it up in the future and test it in the summer. If you'd like to see other tests with the African dagger or have any comments of what we should test with this African dagger, please let us know in the comment section below. And we'll see you on the next one. Bye bye!